So like most of the workshops, we just end up in DevTools and coding live, working with some snippets, playing around with code and seeing the result. One of you was asking in the stand-up this morning about, where can we actually test and run our JavaScript code? Well, JavaScript's one of those languages, or one of the only languages that runs in the browser, right? So a nice, easy way to run your JavaScript code is just to go to the development tools in your browser. We tend to use Google Chrome for this. We recommend that, but of course, other browsers work as well and have that functionality. And we'll look at how to use DevTools a bit more in depth this afternoon when we talk specifically about DevTools and productivity. So, if you want to code along, you're more than welcome to code along as well if you open up your own DevTools thing. If you don't know how to do that, you can just go to a browser window. I tend to use incognito so that nothing's running in the background and messing around with my console messages. And then just right-click anywhere on that screen, click Inspect, and that will bring up some sort of window. It might not look completely like this. I've obviously played around with the layout and things. You might have a split screen version. If you've got a split screen version and you don't want that, you can come up here and change the dock. So I've just got this sort of mirror image for the full screen stuff for the workshops. Yeah. As I say, if you don't follow along that, it's no problem. Just listen, learn, take notes, all those sorts of things. Right. So, and then go to sources if you want to write an actual script, and you can do a new snippet sort of thing as well there. All right. So, most of the course, is about JavaScript. We're a JavaScript-based bootcamp. We'll look at vanilla JavaScript, so in other words, just the core JavaScript language, and of course we also look at React, a really useful modern library to help us build user interfaces. And not just that, right? Whole projects nowadays, but that was its original intention, So, we're going to cover a few fundamentals, or what I call the building blocks of the language today. We'll try and hopefully challenge most people in the room. For some of you, this stuff still might be quite basic, but we're going to make sure that we've all got this fundamental understanding, because I know people who have been through other boot camps and they even get to the end of the boot camp and they're still not sure on certain fundamentals and they're still getting things mixed up. So it's worthwhile spending a lot of time on this, even if you think you know it pretty well. So today, the rough scope is going to be, we're going to look at data types. What data types have we got in JavaScript? What are the most important ones? Strings, absolutely. Strings are a common data type. Other data types, guys, that we might have already used or you've heard of? Boolean, true or false? Null, so null is one of those. I could call it a data type as well. Say again? Numbers, numbers. So there's no float, there's no integer in JavaScript, just numbers. They're all numbers. Symbols is a new one, a symbol is a data type, Array, array again. Object, good. We've covered most of the important ones. There are other less used ones as well, but good, fantastic start. So we're going to then look at sort of variables, functions, and then look at two key data types that I put here, objects and arrays. So we'll look at a few ways of manipulating and working with objects and arrays this morning as well.
So, Graham, how can I watch it on YouTube?
So Kadiri.com, so youtube.com/Kadiri/live. If you want to follow along on YouTube as well. I will zoom in when we start working so that you can see the screen a little bit better as well. All right. So we've covered a few data types then. If you want to write a script in DevTools, surround it in some curly braces. And we're going to write the code inside. So we mentioned a few data types then. So let's actually look at how we declare those data types to JavaScript. So the first one mentioned by Sonia was strings. So how can I denote a string in JavaScript? How can I tell JavaScript this is a string?
Text.
What, I type the word text in front of it and then put something? What do I do for us? With quotes, okay, right. So we've got some symbols, right? Some shorthand symbols. I know this is basic stuff, but let's just review it anyway, right? So single quotes, double quotes, is there any difference? Either. Is there a difference? Just what we prefer. Yep, so in JavaScript there's no difference between the single quotes and the double quotes. And then you might see people like mixing quotes, you know, putting stuff like that inside. I don't really like that practice, right? It will technically work, but if we have different quotation marks like that, we maybe have single quotes on the outside and then actual quotes inside the string. It will work, but yeah, it's not a great practice. So try and avoid it if you can. So we've got three options. We've got single quotes, double quotes, and backticks, I think was mentioned as well. Yeah. So the single quotes and the double quotes we refer to as string literals. Yeah. And the backticks, does anyone know what we refer to those as? Backticks, absolutely. We could call them backticks. And
Template literals.
yeah, nice Edward. Yeah, so template literals. So if you want to use, you know, the correct terminology in an interview or something like that, and properly distinguish between what you're using, then yeah, you've got string literals for the single and double quotes, and template literals for the backticks. All right. So yeah, we can write those in various ways. If we wrote it using a string literal, yeah, okay, we'll do that when we come on to variables, but we'll look at the differences when we come on to variables. So yeah, other data types. We said objects. How do I tell JavaScript it's an object? What symbol do I use? Do I use a hash? This is an object. What do I use?
Curly braces.
Curly braces, right? Yeah, so curly braces denotes that something is an object. What does an object contain?
Key values.
Key value pairs, right? There's not just one discrete thing that's not linked to anything else. The keys and the values are linked in some way inside of an object. Yeah, so I would have the key, and then I would have, I'll just put it as a string for now, I would have the value. If I wanted another key and another value, how do I tell an object I want another one? Comma, yep, so we separate things inside of an object with a comma. So we've now got key 2, and does my value have to be a string? What sort of data type can my value be? Could be a number, yeah. Anything else? A what? Anything, essentially, right? Any data type that we've got in JavaScript, we can then put as the value. Empty array, another object. Yeah, we can have objects within objects, all stuff like this. So how do we know it's an object? Curly braces, make sure it's got key value pairs inside. Yeah? Okay, how about arrays? Stop me at any time if you've got questions. I know I'm going quite fast, but hopefully this is going to be a good review video for some of those people that need these basics.
Here, where you put value, that's a string because it's
Exactly, yeah, this is denoted as a string value. Yeah, so I could have maybe made that a bit clearer. Yeah, so that's a string. And then if we had, just giving the game away, but if we have square brackets, guys, what's that? Array, right? And the array itself can also contain strings or objects, or yeah, we can really manipulate these data types in JavaScript. Why is that? What's different perhaps between JavaScript and a language like Java? Or even C, yeah?
JavaScript is a scripting language.
JavaScript is a scripting language, yeah. What's it can follow many paradigms. It can follow the functional programming paradigm. It can follow object orientated, but in terms of how it's typed.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
JavaScript is weakly typed.
JavaScript is weakly typed or dynamically typed, yeah. And what that means is we don't have to specify beforehand what type we want each value to be. We don't have to say create a string that is a string, you know, just by putting those certain marks, those quotation marks or those curly braces, we're saying, okay, well, you know, this is what the data type is at this time. And we can manipulate and we can change data types very, very easily. We can easily change something from a string into an array, even though it's assigned to the same variable. We can't do that with languages like Java that are strongly typed. Yeah, you've got weakly typed, strongly typed.
So some specific specifications.
Yeah, you have to specify beforehand, the same way as you have to do in a lot of databases. You have to say this field can only contain an integer or a number up to a certain value, right? And you specify that beforehand. And if anyone tries to assign something into that field or into that variable, the programming language will not like it. Yeah? So just be aware of that as well. But it's a powerful thing of JavaScript, but also when building big applications, it can be a weakness because it can make it harder to debug, right? So that's why increasingly things like TypeScript are becoming popular. That brings strong typed functionality to the JavaScript language. Yeah. If I'm just saying words at the moment, that's fine, right? They're there to think about and to play around within your heads if it's triggering some terminology for you. All right. I won't go through all the data types, but let's say rather than just, you know, writing hello, I can run the code down here in DevTools. Should I zoom in a little bit more? Why am I not zooming today? It's a bit weird.
Sorry, why are those curly brackets always there at one at the beginning and one?
Yeah, so this is a bit beyond the scope of this lecture, but it's essentially because we need to wrap the code inside of a block, inside of a code block, so that we don't have naming conflicts with our variables, because we're running this code repeatedly and Chrome is storing some stuff in the memory. Yeah, it's beyond the scope of this lecture really, right? But it's, just think, whenever I use DevTools, I need to wrap all of my code inside of curly braces for now. Okay, it's a code block to deal with scoping issues. What's that, Ahmed?
In other words, they're kind of like a borderline so that you don't cross another kind of.
Yeah, you don't have naming conflicts, you don't have redeclared variables, stuff like that, right? So I was trying to zoom in a little bit and okay, right. Is that a bit better? People can see on the screen now? Cool. So if we wanted to store this string for later use, how would I do it in JavaScript? Variables, right? That's the next topic, right? I want to talk about variables. So we can store some values and give them a name, an alias if you like, that we can reuse later in our program by creating a variable. How do I do that in JavaScript? How do I create a variable?
Let or
Okay, yep, so we've got three options. Let has been described. I don't know what's up with my keyboard this morning. Things aren't working as intended. Is this modern or old, var? Old? Yeah. Classic. Yeah. Are you picking up Ricardo's terminology already, or is this your own? And then the other modern method, I think I heard it from that end of the room. Const. Yeah. Again, we won't talk too much about the differences really now, but essentially, that's that one there. Oh, I haven't given it a name, right? So it's a bit weird, right, to do that, but just to get used to the format. We declare variables by, firstly we have this keyword. It has to be either let, var or const, and then we give our variable a name, an equal symbol, the assignment operator in JavaScript, and then we give it a value. Again, this value doesn't have to be a string, right? It could be a number, could be an array, could be an object, and so forth. And that's the syntax, right, for all three. Var is the old way of declaring things. That used to be the only way available in JavaScript to create a variable. In 2015, we got let and const added to the language as well. So these are now the preferred method, and essentially you should almost never need to use var in modern programming. So if you're currently writing var statements, try and get away from that. There are good reasons for that. Again, we'll talk about these later on, but essentially it's going to pollute your global scope. It has the ability to pollute your global scope, create a lot of variables that can't be garbage collected and therefore take up extra memory. And yeah, for other reasons it makes things a little bit harder to debug as well. Alright, so try and get away from. So that's how we declare a variable and give it a value. Then if I want to use that variable later on in my code, how do I do that? If I just want to use that variable, let's say I now just want to log something out to the console, yeah? So Jack said something interesting. He said, just invoke it. Do we invoke variables?
Oh, sorry, I'd write the capital let.
Yeah. So we just write the name, yeah? Usually, by the way, we don't write variables with uppercase, right? We use camel case. So camel case is lowercase letter for the first word, and then every subsequent word has a capital letter as its first letter. Yeah, so that's camel case. That's the convention from JavaScript, for JavaScript. You go to other languages, you'll get other conventions. I won't talk too much about other cases now either, because we're focused on the fundamentals. So yeah, Jack said we just write the name of the variable if we want to reuse it anywhere else in our code. We don't need to invoke it. Invoking would be doing that, putting some brackets afterwards. What do we invoke if we want to reuse it? Methods or functions. Yep, absolutely. So we'll talk about those in a second, but just know the differences, right? To use a variable, just simply write its name, and that will run the code and replace string 1 with this value. Note that this isn't inside anything. It's not inside any special characters, no $sign, no nothing like that. So it's just literally the name of the variable with no formatting or gloss around it, yeah? So if I run that now, hopefully we're going to see to the console what value being printed. Modern 1, right? The value of string 1 is modern 1. So let's run that code, and we get, if I am on, yeah, okay, there we go. So we get modern 1 printed to the console. Yeah. If I change that instead to var, what am I going to get? Someone else? Old, yes. String of old. Okay, we get the idea, right? Any questions on variables and how we declare them? No? How do we reassign something that's already stored in the variable? Let's say I don't want to have modern 1 for my value of string 1. Instead, I just want to return an array with welcome everyone as 2 separate items. So what do? Let's say I've initially declared it using let, and then I log it, and then I want to change the value of string 1, and then log it again. Right? So how do I reassign a variable and give it a different value?
So you still use the same variable and give it a different name?
No, I don't want to create another variable. I've got one. I just want to update the value. How do I reassign the value of a variable?
So we don't really let, just give it a new value, let the name equal.
Yep, so literally I can just type the name of the variable and that equals again. So equals both assigns and reassigns. Yeah, we
Initializing.
okay.
Initializing.
So for this, when you're creating the variable, you are both initializing it and assigning a value to it all in one step. Yeah. Initializing on its own would just look like that on line 4. Yeah, you can just do that as well, and that would initialize it to undefined. Yeah, it would not contain a value apart from the value of undefined, which is another data type or primitive in JavaScript. Yeah. But line 4 just does it all in one step. Initializes, assigns a value, and then if I want to assign it to an array with 2 items in, 2 strings in, let's just say welcome everyone, for example. What do I do? You want numbers? Okay, just numbers, right? Pick me 2 numbers and put them in the array for me. Give me the syntax. 5,9. Fantastic, right. So now, when we console.log for the second time, what value are we going to get? Are we going to get modern 1? Are we going to get this value? Something different?
The last one.
Yeah, the last one, right? It should. This console log will, of course, still log modern 1. And then we'll have a second console log that says second. Maybe we should put second log is. And then we should get logged out the value of the array. Let's clear the console, run it. Yeah. So now we've successfully updated the value of our variable. Yeah.
And if you don't want to add any, you can use constant, right?
And if you don't want
You use
to,
instead of when you first declare, you use instead of let constant.
all right, as it's come up, we can go into that. Yeah. So
Just
yeah.
a question. So when you declare the first one, modern 1,
Yep.
and you change the variable, so the modern 1 still remains, it doesn't dissipate, or anything like that.
The modern 1. So that value is now just floating. It's not assigned to anything. So there is no way to access modern 1. So that will get garbage collected by JavaScript. JavaScript has garbage collection automatic. Yeah, automatic garbage collection. Rather, you don't have to tell it, please delete this value from memory. It will automatically do that for you because there's no reference to it. There's no way of accessing now the value of modern 1.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you can't recall it if you need to.
No, you can't say like string 1 previous step or something like that. No. There's no way to do it. Once you've reassigned it, that original value has been lost essentially. Yeah. All right. Good question. And then Ahmed has posed us another question, and he says, what instead if we didn't use let, we used const? What will now happen? Same thing. There's one option.
I don't think it's going to change it to 5 and 9. We'll just show modern 1.
Okay.
What kind of constants?
And Ahmed says it's not going to reassign.
Yeah, I think constants is kind of like a strict variable, you can't change it. While let's, you can change it. Let's change it.
Okay, so we got divided opinion, but the majority, I think, is saying that this line will not run. Line 6 will not run. It won't work. It won't get reassigned because we've used const. So will we still get second log is modern 1, or will it cause the code to break? Will it cause an error?
I think we'll still get modern 1.
Okay, let's run it and we'll find out, yeah? So,
Yes, because we try to reassign when it's constant, that's what we get.
yeah, right? So line 5 works, okay? Then we get to this line. Oh, hang on, you're trying to do something illegal. You've used const, and you're trying to reassign to a const declared variable. That is not allowed Yeah, the error is very specific. Type error, assignment to a constant variable at line 6, blah, 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 yeah? So, yeah, you can't reassign with const, but other than that, that's pretty much the only difference, right? You cannot reassign. You can still change the values if you're clever. You can change them of complex objects like array by using mutator methods and all stuff like that. But again, that's beyond the scope currently of this introduction. But the main difference is you cannot reassign using const, okay? So if you're happy now to use const, that's probably the preferred way if you're sure that you don't want your variables to change. If you expect them to change, use let. Yeah, that's the simple rule. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, so again, I welcome questions at any point or any input from anyone else if they've got things they think I've glossed over or want to add. Kieran, yeah? Yeah, again, we're not going to talk about scope in the introduction, but definitely we'll talk later on about scope and different scoping issues, and there are different scoping issues between var and between let and const and things like that as well. Yeah.
One question.
Mhm.
What happens if what you wrote there, second log is, doesn't go between quotes?
What happens? Yeah, good question. Okay, so your question is, what if we didn't put second log is in quotes? Why is that saying, oh, hang on, there's something not quite right in your code? What is it complaining about?
This is string needs to be in quotes.
Yeah, but let's say we don't even know whether it's a string. So what is the code trying to do as I wrote it like that?
Try and find a variable.
Yeah. So look at the color differences, Sebastian, yeah? We've got string 1 has got no symbols around it, yeah? No quotation marks, no square brackets. It's colored in white. Yeah, it's essentially saying this is a variable or this is something that has been stored in memory. So when we take away those quotation marks, it's trying to do the same for second and log and is. It's treating them as variables. It's trying to find second in memory. Where's second being stored? I don't know. Yeah?
Does it exist?
Doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So we're just sending it on this wild goose chase. Yeah, there's nothing there. Yeah, go and find second for me, and it just can't do it. Yeah, it does not exist. So it's treating it as a variable.
Console log is something that was already defined by the program.
Yeah, so that's part of the core language. Yeah, console is it's going to have some methods attached to it, and these are built into the language. Yeah, console log is a method the same way you've used probably. What have you used so far? I don't know, maybe string.split or something like that. Then it's a method, yeah. Log is a method that's attached to the console object. But predefined in the language, yep. Cool. Alright, any more questions on variables? I think I'm happy to leave that there for now. So that's just if we want to store a single value for later use. What about if we have a whole block of code or code that does a certain thing and we want to store that for later use? What could we use instead? Function, yeah. Next one on that list, right? My little segue. So we could use a function to store a block of code in memory, and we could invoke it, as Jack said, later. Invoke or call it later on when we want to actually run the code inside of that function. So let's do that now. Let's create a function. You're probably familiar with this because you've all done your first challenge at least on the Kadiri platform. And most of that on the right hand side begins by writing a function declaration. Yeah. So how do I do it? What do I do first? Function. It's a key word again in JavaScript. Yeah. This has a predefined meaning. Function. Then what? Name of the function. So for now I'm just going to be really explicit, right? And this is the function name. Then what?
You can write whatever you want.
Yeah, so not quite whatever you want. So there are things that are valid and things that aren't valid for function names. Try and just stick to camel case words. don't put weird symbols at the front or numbers or anything like that. Yeah, that's not going to be valid. So just use alphabetic characters and do it in camel case for the name of your function. Yep. Brackets, so normal parentheses, normal brackets, yep. Yep, like that.
Curly bracket. Curly bracket and curly, yeah, that's inside.
Well, I'm gonna put both of them, right? And I'm just gonna drop it down a line, and we're gonna write the stuff inside the function that we want to write. Yeah, inside of the function body. Space here, or not? Yeah, let's practice, right? Let's put a space there, a little bit more readable.
What's the use for the brackets there?
Okay, yeah, good question. We're definitely going to come on to that. So what's the use for these brackets?
If you're passing data back and forth.
Yeah, so Ricardo broke it down yesterday into inputs and outputs, right? So we can put our inputs in here, into things that we want to put into the function. We can again name them whatever we want. I'll just leave it like that for now. So if we want to pass some information, pass some values into our function, we would put them between those brackets there. Yeah. And then that means that these values are stored in variables, and those variables are only available inside of this function, and of course we can reference them the same way as we did the other variables, just by typing their name. Yeah. All right. What do you want to write a function about, guys? Any inspiration? No? Wow. Huh? For loop. Old-fashioned for loop. Yeah, we could. All right. We'll just do some basic doubling of numbers, right? The same old basic things. Let's first, yeah, all right. Let's create the whole function first. Let's just say we're going to give it a list of numbers. So if I'm giving it a list, what am I probably passing in? What data type? What's a collection or a list? Yeah, an array, right? So if you've got an array and you want to do something to each element in that array, what method do you tend to use, or what would be a good method to use? For each is one, but for each doesn't actually return anything itself. So I want a method that actually returns something. For each always returns undefined. So it's a bit tricky in that sense. Yeah. What's quite similar to for each? Anyone know yet? For of is a type of loop. For each is an actual method. Yeah. Lengths? No, not length. Filter. We're getting closer. It's of the same sort of generation as find and filter. There's one called map, right? So it takes each value in an array and maps it into a new value. So this will be a bit beyond some of you at the moment. That's fine. We're going to look at array methods later on in the week. So essentially, map is an array method. So it can only be used on arrays, yeah, which is just why I put that a little array symbol there in front of it for now. So I'm going to pass in an array of numbers soon. So I can reference those numbers by using the variable name. And then I'm going to map each number in that list to just double the number. How do I double something or multiply something by 2 in JavaScript? Star 2 would work, absolutely. So that's all we've written so far, right? We're going to give it an input of some numbers, which we haven't done yet, but we'll do in a second. We're going to take each number in that list and multiply it by 2. And then we want to return that from the function. So what does it need? It needs the output. We need to return something, make the function run some output. Yeah, give us some output. If I now run that, will I... okay, let's put them in... It's not the best example to do that, but a function on its own, does line 5 actually get run at any point. Just written like that. Or are we missing a step with functions?
You basically, you have any values.
I haven't got any values, no. So where do the values usually go?
You call the function name.
Yeah, we call the function, right? We need to call the function. Sorry, that's what I was trying to get at with my terrible clues there. I was trying to say that we've declared a function, and now we need to call it. Yeah, so this has just stored a function in memory, the same way as when we created a variable, we stored it in memory. Now we actually want to use it to get the return value of it. How do we do that? Well, we just, again, write the function name. This time we need some parentheses because it's a function. And what goes inside of the parentheses? The inputs, yeah? This is where we pass in the inputs. And I want to give it an array. And let's just give an array of values. Well, I don't know why I did 5 there, maybe to catch you out.
It's not 0.
You want 0 as well? We can have a 0 as well, why not?
Let's start with 0.
I'm not putting the indexes, I'm just putting any values I want in there. I could have put 762, whatever, yeah? But let's put a 0 in to see what it does. Okay, so now, when I run this code, it should store the function in memory, and then later on, it's going to run that function. There might be loads of code all between this, yeah? You might have just stored it at the top of your file, and later on, or even in a different file, a different module, you might invoke and actually run that code. Yeah, so they don't have to appear one after the other. You can declare it, and then run your function, run your code later.
What's the use of the curly brackets
Here,
here and the
so the outside ones are because we're in DevTools, as we previously discussed. These inner ones denote a code block. So this isn't an object in this case, right? I think they run out of symbols on the keyboard or something. They think we've got to double up the usage. So I don't know, right? But you've got curly braces here say we've got a block of code that we want to just contain within one statement, essentially. Well, not one statement, one block, right? That's the word for it.
And would it work anyway if the first curly bracket was on the line after?
If that was there,
Yeah.
would it still work?
Or before the word return?
I think it will still work, but it's a bad practice, right?
Okay,
We're trying to adhere to the... Yes, the indentation, the elegance, the readable code is for those reasons. But I'm going to do a weird indentation and see whether that actually works. What do we expect to return from this function, guys?
0 times 2, 1 times 2.
Yeah, so that's the operation, that's what it's doing, but what will we get as our return value? Will it be a string, a number, or what? We're definitely going to get an array back, yeah? We give an array as an input, and map doesn't change the data type, it gives an array back as well. And what will the array contain? Those numbers, different numbers? Those numbers times 2, yeah. So 0, comma 2, comma 4, comma 6, comma 8, yeah? Let's run it, see if it works. Did that run? No. So, unless I'm doing something weird that's not running for some reason, so maybe it doesn't work like that, or can anyone spot errors that I've made? No?
The indentation stopping it from actually even showing the...
This is what I'm going to test now. So why is it not running? Line 5, return numbers dot map. Take each number. No, so this is an individual number just declared inside.
I think there's something wrong with the actual...
Yeah, my laptop does seem to be a bit weird this morning.
We would have still come up with one of the
Close the parentheses.
I haven't closed the parentheses. Good spot. Yeah. So look, I did not close the parentheses. Oh, I did close it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the actual console itself.
So what I'm going to do now is just
Sorry, when
copy and paste it into a new instance and just check that it was for that reason. Question, Sebastian?
Yeah, I'll ask you when it's on screen.
Okay. So let's try again. See whether it was just having a hissy fit this morning. I'll get rid of these weird comments up here. It shouldn't be affecting it. But.
After number.
Yeah, okay. So it works, right? There was nothing wrong with the code, just an instance with DevTools. So if you get weird results like that, just make sure you close it and try it again. Sorry. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. So as expected, we've got an array back with double the original numbers in it. It can handle zeros. Yeah, no problem. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that was functions. How are we doing for time? I know this is a long one initially. Do you want to look at objects and arrays a little bit more, or leave it there? How are we doing? We still awake? Yeah? You're still up for it? Yeah, okay, good stuff. And Ace, if you want to input any time, you're more than welcome. Sorry, I should have said that at the start, but yeah, you can commandeer the laptop and take over at any stage if you wish. Alright, so let's still get our function, and then let me just rename it to working with objects. These aren't great names, but it's at least setting my intention, right? What I want to try and do now. So firstly, let's create an object and assign it into a variable. How would I do that? Curly braces. What? So this is the first thing, right? Yeah, curly braces. You can put whatever you want in the object. Use your imagination. It's better than my numbers, hopefully. Name. Yeah. So just like that. Then what? Colon. Yep. So the colon splits the key and the value. So key colon space and then write the value. Do you want to give it a name? Edwards. Oh, he's going for. Yeah. Use yourself in the object. Yeah. Anything else in the object, or just the name for now? Oops. Comma. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get Edward's life story now, guys. You ready? Age. Yeah. All right. Age. 16. Beautiful. You've matured nicely. Anything else? Do you want a number 16? Yeah. That's it for now? Cool. So, all right, yeah. Has that been stored in a variable yet? No. Can we do that? What are we going to use? Var? Let? Const? Yeah, okay, let's use let. Let what? Person? Yeah. Person's fine for now, right? Let person equals this object. This comma, is it valid? No. I haven't got anything else afterwards. The code checker's not complaining, so it might work. We'll leave it there for now, right? We'll discover later whether it complains about that or not. Okay, so we've got an object. Now if I just want to, let's firstly just return that object. So we've done the basic operation in CRUD. Anyone know what CRUD stands for? Create, read, next one. Create, read, update, delete. Yeah, so it's more commonly used for databases and stuff like that. But you could apply the same principle, if you like, to the basics of working with data types as well. How do we create an object? Well, we spoke about that, right? We just use these symbols, these curly braces, and we assign it into a variable. So that's still creating it, really. Yeah, creating a variable and creating an object as the value. Next, obviously, we can look at how to read it and how to update it. So let's say I just want to read the value of the name inside of the person object. How do I do that? So how do I access Edward and return Edward here without typing Edward? Yeah, let's do it dynamically.
Person goes name, but I don't know what goes before it.
Person.name. So you're saying this will look for person as a variable. Does that exist? Yeah, look, we've declared it there on line 3. Then the dot syntax for objects says, does the object have a name key or a name property? We use these words interchangeably, yeah? Keys and properties. So if it does have a name key, then return the value of return the value assigned to that key, yeah? The one that it's paired with. So will this return Edward or not, as it is? I'll get rid of this numbers. We're not passing in any information at the moment. We're just invoking the function. Yes, we reckon that's going to return Edward. Let's try. Let me clear. And it does, yeah? So that's fantastic. We've created an object and we've learned how to read information out of that object later, and also to return it from a function.
Should we try and move the last comma then after A16, please?
Yeah. So also it worked with the comma there. If it doesn't have the comma there, does it still work?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So you used to be not allowed to have trailing commas, but in modern JavaScript we're allowed trailing commas, probably for the reason if, I don't know, someone just wants to mess around with our object and move things around. Still works now because there's a comma there. And if we're updating objects with functions and we're adding things in all the time and things don't have trailing commas, that could obviously break our code at some point as well. So is it a best practice? I don't think it's really a best practice, but I quite like to leave the trailing commas on there just in case I end up moving things around for refactoring reasons. So up to you. Preference again. Personal thing. Yep, so is there another way to access properties inside of an object? That was the dot notation. Is there any other way of doing it?
There's a bracket notation.
There is a square bracket notation as well. How would I write that, Edward, or anyone else?
So you put the brackets.
Oh, not that one, the other one, right?
Yeah.
So this is not, don't confuse this with an array. This is not creating an array because we've got an object in front of it. This is just a way of accessing a certain key. That work, Ed? Like that? Yeah? Okay. Everyone agree, disagree? Yeah? Just run it? Okay. So if I run that, ooh, undefined. Why is that undefined? It's not accessing, so why is it not accessing it? Yeah. So when we use square bracket notation, we need the key inside of quotes. Like that. Yeah. So without the quotes, with the square bracket notation, it's looking for a variable called name. So that would only work if we had something like that, a variable which actually contained, the string of name. Then that would work. But of course that's not great code, right? We're just repeating ourselves. So what's the point? Let's just have something in there in this case, because we know the name of the key. If we did not know, when we wrote line 5, if we didn't know the name of the key and the value of it was coming from somewhere else in our code, from a different function or a different file even, that is the use case for the square brackets, right? When we're assigning our key dynamically Yeah, so this code will now work, and it will still return Edward. If we now want to return age, what do I need to change?
Use the dot.
If I want to return 16, yeah, the value assigned to age.
Person dot age.
So let's change the key, right, to age. Yeah, and this might be being set by somewhere external in our program. Yeah, it might even be outside of this function. Yeah, that's a better example, if it was outside of the function. And then my function always works. Yeah, no matter what the value of key, as long as it's defined in the object. Obviously, if I put a load of rubbish in here, it's going to look for an object with a key of all of this stuff. Run it. Of course, it's undefined, right? There's no key that equals that. So if you know the name of the key inside of the function and you want to statically set it, sure, then do something like that. Yeah, that's fine. But that function now will only ever return the name of the person. If you just want to, so that function would be like get name or something like that. Yeah, get person name. And then of course change your name down there so that it matches. This way, it's dynamic. So it could be a more general function. Get object. Well, maybe not best because object.values is a method, but get object property or something like that, right? And then we could make it more general, and that will always return the specified property of the function. If I don't want to declare my key up there, how else could I do it? How do I pass my inputs again into a function? Let's say I want to leave this code as it is, and I don't have line 2. What's the problem there? Key isn't defined, right? So I need to give that function some input. I need to pass a value for key into that function. Remind me how I do that again for those that it was new to. How do I give an input to my get object property function? Add an argument. Where does it go?
It goes where the invoking is. Okay, yeah, under the get
Uh-huh. So what do you want to put in there? Let's return your age, perhaps, yeah?
age, yeah.
Yeah, so we can put the string of age in there. Will that work now? No? What's missing? Yeah, so key is still not defined. Where does it go? You're just pointing to the sky, Kieran. It's up there somewhere. Right. It goes in here, yeah? After the function name. So now that should work, right? So now we've made our function a lot more dynamic, a lot more useful. It works for multiple cases rather than just with the dot syntax returning just the age.
So so for objects, everything has to always be in the quotes.
For objects,
whether
everything.
it's returning numbers or strings or whatever.
So if you are dynamically, do you mean this, right? If you're dynamically setting the key,
Yeah.
then what you pass in must be in quotes. Is that the question or a different question? Sorry, I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, I was thinking that regardless of any way we set, whether without setting it up, the original way we did with the square brackets,
The original we did with the dot notation, right?
with the square brackets. And
Oh.
we forgot to add the quotes when we
Yep.
when we put the name. But then if we're putting the age, this is a number that is coming up. Should we add the quotes as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the property, if you are declaring it in here and it's not a variable, it must be declared as a string. technically all of these are strings. Yeah, it's only JavaScript shorthand that allows us to omit the quotation marks for the keys. Under the hood, this is stored as a string. Yeah, name is a string, age is a string. Yeah, so that's why we must reference them as a string. But everyone writes objects like that nowadays. Yeah, we just write it as a variable, but technically it's not, right? It's stored as a string in the object. Yeah. All right. So that was creating, reading, updating. If I want to update something in a object, if I want to put a new name in there. Quiet down a sentence. Sonia, Catherine, how would I put a new name into my person object? How would I reassign the name inside of the person object? Any ideas? Yeah, nice. So Sonia's suggestion was, can I just access it using person.name, and then can I assign it or reassign it? And as it was Sonia's answer, let's put the name now equal to Sonia. I know what I want to return. I want to return the name, so I'm just going to use dot syntax. What will this now return? Will it return Edward, Sonia, undefined, something else? Sonia, right? I think we agree, Sonia. Yeah, cool. So again, similar to variables, that's how we reassign something inside of an object. Object, key, equals operator.
In which cases, instead of putting dot and the key, you would prefer the brackets?
Okay, so that's what I tried to explain previously. Yes, we use the square bracket notation when we don't know the exact key that we want to access. It's coming from outside of our function. Got to go back a bit, right? So when it's maybe being passed in as an input and being defined outside, that's when we'd use the square bracket notation. Yeah, if I now want to return the name, I've passed in the name outside of my function, assigned it to a variable, and inside the square brackets is a variable that must be a string. Yeah, so when you want to use a variable to access object keys, then you use the square bracket notation. Okay. Yeah. Play around with it. In objects beginner training, I think there's a question 3 or something, which is exactly on this principle. Yeah, so that's a good one to revise if it's not quite clear. Yeah, there's probably a video as well that will explain it in a different way. Cool. Also, we've got delete. How do we delete something from an object? It's quite aggressive, but it does exist, at least in JavaScript.
Is it delete square brackets?
So Jack's suggestion is it's actually using the word delete. Oh, that's gone purple. It must do something in JavaScript. Don't know what it does. Does it wipe my whole computer? We'll find out. But it's not going to return. Yeah, because I haven't said anything yet to delete, right? It's just not. It's waiting for something else.
If delete works, then person.name or person.age, whatever you want.
Okay, so what do we want to delete? Let's delete person.age, perhaps, because he was very shy about giving his age away. So we'll keep it private for now. And then let's try that. So now I'm just returning the person object itself, right? Just to see whether age is still inside of it. It's not, right? We've successfully deleted the key value pair out of that object by using the keyword delete. So that's your basic CRUD operations in objects, right? You'll use these things time and time again until they're second nature, but hopefully that's a good reference point to refer back to if you're unsure of anything. Cool. Do you want to quickly do the same with arrays, or we want to leave it there? Yeah, you good? Good. Consensus? Nodding? Okay, yeah, cool. All right, generally the workshops we try and keep to sort of a half hour, 40 minutes or something, but it's fine, right? We can make this a long one if you're still attentive. The one after lunch will probably be shorter, right? Everyone's in the slump after lunch, even after table tennis. But cool. So this time, not an object, but an array. How do I create an array? Shout it out. What sort of brackets? Square brackets. Nice. Inside the array, what do you want, Kieran? Inside the array, yeah. What do you want? An array of names? An array of something? What do you want? Names, yeah. What names do you want? Daffy Duck? Yeah. Anything else? Say again? Mickey Mouse. Right, we're going with Disney characters. Okay. Anything else, guys? One more, maybe?
First one would be Donald Duck.
Donald Duck. Oh, all right, yeah. Is it not a Daffy as well?
It's not Disney.
Okay. Been corrected on the semantics of my Disney characters. I do apologise. Anything else? One more? Huh? Pluto. Fantastic. There we go. Good. Nice set. So we've got an array of strings, and those strings just happen to be some names. So we've done the first step, right? We know how to create an array and assign it into a variable. Next, what was next in my CRUD? What does the R stand for? Reads, yeah. How do we access certain values in an array? Let's say I want to return Donald Duck. How would I return Donald Duck from this function?
Name dot and then you open the square bracket.
Name dot open the square bracket and put what?
0. 0, yeah.
0. Okay. I've got a red error at the moment. So any suggestions to improve that from someone else?
There's no dots.
There's no dot, right? So to access something inside of an array, we just use the square brackets, and inside goes the index, what we call the index, or the position, if you like, right? If you're not familiar with the term of index. Why is it a 0? Because 0 refers to the first element or the first value in the array. Yeah. So this is at the 0 index. Mickey Mouse is at the first index, index 1, and Pluto's at index 2. Yeah. How about name? Is that okay? Yeah, plural, right? So there's more than one name in my array. It's a list, so therefore let's make sure we correctly reference it as names. Will that return the string of Donald Duck? Should, yeah. Let's give it a go. Yeah, why?
Is it because of the object of property?
Oh.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's better, right? I was very weird for some reason with my strings, separating them as separate strings, so it saw it all as one string, I think. So that's better. Now we've got separate values separated by commas. That wasn't a purposeful mistake. I actually made that mistake. I wasn't being really tricky. That's for the board challenges. So I'll talk about the board challenge as well later. I meant to do it this morning. Cool. So that, if I want to return Pluto, it's 2, right? Simple as that. Nice. All right. How do I update something in an array?
Yes, a couple of methods. You can do push or shift.
Yeah. So essentially, there's lots of methods available for that. Yeah. Can we just do something weird like that? Does that actually work?
That's what I was thinking.
But if we want to reassign something at a certain index, could we actually do that?
I think you can.
So let's see if we can get rid of Pluto and instead just say hello. Yeah, it works, right? So you can reassign in that way. But the whole array itself is still of length 3, right? We've completely overwritten Pluto. I think some of you were suggesting some methods maybe to add things to an array as well, to update them in that way, and that's definitely part of update. We won't really go into it now, I think, because of limited time, but there are various methods, right? We've got push, which pushes something to the end. Again, JavaScript training, I think it's beginner on arrays has these methods. If not, it's intermediate, as well as, yeah. Yeah, okay, if you want to finish it and push on, oops, that was an interesting spelling of your name, Catherine, I'm sorry. If you want to add Catherine to the list.
Sorry, if you put, as you had before, names, square brackets, and instead of 2 you put I don't know, 3 that you don't have, and you put, does it add it afterwards?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't honestly know the answer to that off the top of my head. So we're trying essentially to push something to an array using this syntax, right? Does it work? I doubt it, but sorry, I didn't return.
So hello being the fourth one, being 3.
It was trying to do push every time you finish. I always try to do this. It's smart.
It worked.
It did, look at that. It did.
What if we use some weird number? Oh yeah, look at that.
It did.
Oh wow.
It works.
So that does work. But just be careful, right? Because if you don't use the correct number, you get empty times 4. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So yeah, probably. Maybe I don't know why not do that. But if you know the index, then yeah, okay.
It's not best practice though, is it?
Probably not. No, I don't know.
But good idea.
Good idea. I like the thinking. I like the thinking. Yeah. So we cover the array methods another time and how we update them. Yeah, push is certainly one of them. Pop, shift, unshift, all these things. They're quite the old methods. Now we've got other ones. Yeah, I think probably going to leave it there before I start talking absolute rubbish at you. But let's just open up any general questions or things that you would rather I covered in a bit more detail in maybe the next JavaScript workshop. Any suggestions? Any feedback? No? Okay, I'll take it. That was alright then. Thank you very much. Usually it won't be that long, but thanks for your attention for that long time. So from now on, we'll sort out the issues that people raised this morning in the stand-up. If you still haven't correctly got set up with, that's the priority. And then after that, of course, we'll all be floating around to help you with code flicks, training, whatever you want to work on. Alright? Good stuff.